Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're doing Gaming News Consolidated. This is September 22nd through the 28th. We got a lot to cover, and I'll try to make this as quick as I can. But yeah, this is where I go over a few hours, which is definitely more than a few just this week. But go over videos, articles, consolidated all for you right here. So we're going to be talking about Concord. We're going to be talking about Silent Hill 2 Remake. We're going to be talking about God of War Ragnarok, some other games. We're also going to talk about Microsoft buying nuclear energy. That's kind of an interesting one. We're going to go over some polls this week. We're also going to be going a partial blocked video of mine, which just to share about what it's like being a YouTuber, man. I'm already hitting it with 360 subscribers. It's just frustrating. We're going to talk a little bit about the state of play, which is what I'm showing here, so you can enjoy the showcase yourself while you're listening. Space Marine 2, all sorts of stuff. We got a lot. So thanks for tuning in. Like, sub, all that jazz. Don't forget the bell notification on YouTube. And also don't forget about Discord, Twitter X, and of course Twitch if you want it there first. So let's go ahead and get started. We're learning Concord was a much bigger loss than expected. Someone reached out to Colin Moriarty, someone that actually worked with the company. He was actually able to verify that. And he said, it was specified that it used to work at Firewalk Studios. So they don't work there anymore, so they're not technically under any other NDAs, but they could still probably, maybe even legally, still get in trouble with some other contracts and stuff, because they're spilling the beans on how bad this really is. Now, Colin Moriarty is someone that used to work at IGN. He doesn't do that anymore. They basically pushed him out because he wasn't agreeing with everything that IGN was doing. So yeah, they pushed him out. Completely. They didn't want to have differing views whatsoever, which I think is really unfortunate because, yeah, when we have differing views with other people, we can actually have discussions and we can get closer to actually what the truth is instead of just being in our own soundboard, and thinking about things incorrectly, which happens pretty often. So, by the time the game Concord was in alpha, Firework had spent around $200 million. This includes probably Monsters, which was one of the investors, probably some private equity, and maybe to a degree also Sony. $200 million to get it to alpha state. That's insane. To get this game to a sellable product, which is not a great product, just a sellable one. Okay, it's complete, it works. Sony, after buying Firewalk, had to spend another $200 million in a course of about roughly 18 to 20 months. And a lot of that was spent outsourcing to other studios. So now we're at roughly about $400 million. And, this outsourcing, we don't know who they were. But this is incredibly expensive. That's just so much money in less than 2 years. It's incredible. And again, Concord had been a game that was worked on roughly till about 2016, I believe. But that wasn't a full 8 years of development. Okay, there were lockdowns that were an issue. There were other supply chain problems for the next couple of years. The Great Resignation, people were having to go through that, which Striking Distance really struggled with that while making Callisto Protocol. That was such a mess. But yeah, this $400 million so far, roughly, that was spent doesn't include any of the actual buying of Firewalk, which is crazy. And what blows my mind is that Sony saw Concord probably in alpha, talked with Firewalk Studios, and said yes to actually buying them for whatever the price was for buying the studio. Again, this $400 million does not include the cost of actually buying the studio from probably Monsters. And this just kind of seems insane. Now, probably Monsters probably made their money back, and the private equity were probably happy too. Again, otherwise they wouldn't be happy to sell them. But I thought that was kind of curious is that the PM CEO, probably Monster CEO Harold Ryan said, "Firework joining PlayStation is a brilliant move for the team, game, and future players." And just that is aged so poorly. Sony said as well that this game is going to define a new generation of live service experience. And see, for Sony, they saw this and they thought of Concord as kind of the next equivalent of Star Wars. I mean, they had kind of a TV series thing going on with Amazon. They had some other things they were probably working on. They were expecting this live service game to probably last longer, or at least up to 5 years. Um, that's just my guess. But yeah, this was going to be merchandising. This was going to be getting into other stuff. We already know, too, that Sony has also made a deal with Pocket Pair to have Pal World Entertainment to, again, branch into other forms of entertainment and merchandise. And so I think Concord was basically the same idea. Now, before he was president over PlayStation Studios, Concord, Herman Holst's baby, said that Concord... excuse me, I got this backwards. Herman Holst. So he's actually the president over PlayStation Studios. There's someone else, Hinoshino, I believe, is overseeing like the actual business side and hardware side of PlayStation. So Holst is over the studios. Now, he's been with Sony and PlayStation for quite some time. But Concord was like his baby. He was a heavy advocate for the game. And so I'm actually worried about the future of games at Sony because, again, it's like this is kind of his big push. And who knows what other influences he's had at the studio. Because, again, we have 6 live service games that were actually canceled at Sony. And the 6 that we're so far getting just are not doing good. Okay, Destiny 2 is falling apart. People are not excited for Marathon. Fair Games doesn't look good. Concord was, $100 million failure that we all found out in 2 weeks. And what else are they bringing? I mean, we're just not excited about live service anymore. It's had its time in the sun because we've had basically 10 years of pretty chronic live service, and it's just again jumping onto this bandwagon and making a mess. I'm worried too because Sony actually put Holston Power over all of the PlayStation studios and all of the development of the games, including some of them that we're seeing here on the screen. It's like the focus that they have. While some of their projects probably will turn out good, I worry about the AAA stuff because if we're getting more Concord, if we're getting more Marathon and more issues like with Destiny 2, which again, Bungie was supposed to be the lead on live service, and the studio might even just have to have more layoffs than what they've already had. We also have Project Gummy Bears that Sony's working on. They took 75 people away from Bungie after the revenue failure with Destiny 2 and kind of formed a new studio and said, look, you're going to work on this game that's been in incubation, and we're going to start working on it again. So what is Project Gummy Bears? We don't know. Everything just sounds awful. Honestly, I thought Holst was a better choice, but I'm not so sure anymore. And, why ultimately did Concord happen? Why did things get so messed up with the studio and with the game? Basically, people couldn't talk critically about it. They couldn't have a discussion. It's like, look, this is what we're going with, and they're just cogs in the machine. It's not their fault, except I can't see with how messy things have been. I can't see Firework not having layoffs. And I think this is going to be incredibly annoying and frustrating. It's going to be hard because, again, this is a studio that's been working hard on Concord. I mean, the game actually ran pretty well. Some of the gunplay mechanics were good. But again, it's like you made a clone. And if they had anything negative to say, that's the end of that. And I'm sure the employee that actually reached out to Colin Moriarty to talk about this, they're probably frustrated pretty heavily about what's just been going on because it's been a mess. It sounds like they've been there with the studio for a while. And again, we don't know how they know all of this stuff about information because usually financial information with a studio or a game or anything like that or a project usually requires someone to be actually pretty high up. We know, too, that the director of Fireworks Studios, they've stepped down. And now everybody at this point is worried about losing their jobs. They're updating their resumes, all of this stuff. And it's awful. I mean, and some people, too, have already quit. And they're already trying to find other jobs because they can just see the writing on the wall. They can see what's going on with the gaming industry today. So, yeah. God, what a mess. I'll keep you guys up to date as this develops. Silent Hill 2 remake is actually coming to Xbox on October 2025. So we got to wait a year. So this is a timed exclusive that PlayStation is doing. PC will also be able to get it too. But yeah, this will be a timed exclusive for 12 months, and then we'll actually get it on Xbox at a later date. There is plenty of stuff to play between now and then, but if you really want to be able to get it early, I suggest play it, or right away. I suggest playing it on PC or PlayStation. And yeah, the thing that was interesting is that this wasn't drastically announced, Silent Hill 2. It's just that we got a new trailer with a disclaimer at the end for a short period of time that Xbox was going to be later. So, yeah, that's interesting. Honestly, I'm curious if Konami wanted it on Xbox or if Sony countered with a timed exclusive, because we're starting to get into this issue with Sony now. They've done time exclusives for a while, again, which is fine, but I don't think it's paid off as much as they had hoped in the last decade, and I think it's kind of biting them in the ass now. And but a lot of these other publishers are like, look, we can't do complete exclusives anymore. Some are maybe willing to do timed exclusives, but like this is the same thing with Square Enix. They've made it publicly this year that it's like no longer PlayStation exclusives. We're going to get to as many platforms as we can to get as many sales as we can. And they should. It's their product. Why can't they sell it? There's no way I'd do exclusive. I'd be like, no, I'm not going to do that. Especially, they're finally understanding, both Xbox and PlayStation are understanding, look, there's basically hundreds of millions of players, hundreds of millions on PC. There's just 132 million on Steam. It's actually the biggest demographic, at least, as a platform standpoint. Xbox still has the most when you put all of their stuff together. It's over 500 million monthly active users, which is just crazy. But again, it's like they're working on breaching into PC, and so is Sony. So if you're on PC, you're eating pretty good. You're honestly eating pretty good, including Silent Hill 2 remake. God of War Ragnarok is now on Steam, and it's not great. It's still a good game, but let's work for some context here. God of War 1 hit 73,000 peak players on Steam and had a review score of 96. This was January of 2022. God of War Ragnarok hit 31,000 players peak so far, with a review rating of 65%. And this is September of this year. And so the complaints are basically the PSN account requirements. So they didn't learn from Helldivers 2. They did rescind that so that people could still play. But then, they just took Helldivers 2 off of the store for about 180 countries and territories so that they can't even, buy it at this point, which is incredibly frustrating. But yeah, the PSN requirement is basically to boost numbers for shareholders. Because we've talked about this too on the channel. Their PSN numbers at Sony, they're really not that great because they've stagnated. They still have tens of millions of people that are paying, but the majority are just paying for their version of multiplayer. The cheapest tier. And then last count, there's about 8 million that are paying for Plus, and then 6 million that are paying for Premium. So a total of 14. Maybe we're around 15 or 16 million now total. But yeah, that's not a lot. That's really not a lot. Sony is gaining more value for their PSN accounts, but this shouldn't be a barrier to entry to actually enjoy the game, because this isn't even about cost. This is simply just having to have a PSN account to be able to log in, have another launcher, etc., whatever, and having to go through that way. So again, they're still pushing this, and I'm sure Ghost of Tsushima is the same way. Ghost of Yoti is going to be the same way. And again, this is going to be incredibly frustrating, and it's like they didn't learn from this. And then they have all of the countries that they don't allow PSN, which is, at least geographically, most of the world, which is just insane. And then too, this whole PSN requirement, it killed the momentum for Helldivers 2. Not that Helldivers 2 doesn't have its own issues or things to gripe about, which they are working on some of these and working on improving it. And I guess that's actually the stance now, is that it's definitely gotten a lot better. But I haven't played enough to really know or be able to probably tell a difference. So I'm not giving my 2 cents because I don't have any. But yeah, this did kind of kill the momentum for the actual game. And so, yeah, if Sony's not careful, they're just going to kill their games before they can even get out of the gate. And they're cutting into their sales on PC. And it's like, look, if you actually want to port to PC, just go all in. Again, we've even talked about this with Microsoft, with some of their changing business model, like with Game Pass. It's like, look, if you want to go all in, they have to include Call of Duty. That's just how it is. They might make a loss for a while, but like if they can get enough subscribers, it'll pay off and then some. And they are doing it that way, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, just 65% because of the PSN requirement. That's just hideous. Microsoft Flight Simulator. This was pretty crazy. 2024 is going to be the craziest game for PC specs. So the flight sim, it's seen as one of the most realistic games that you can play to fly helicopters, ultralights, planes, jumbo jets, whatever. Basically fly anything. There's tons of aircraft. There's different places to go to. And like if you want to buy the entire game, it's so many gigs. I think it's like 200 gigs or something, or maybe even more than that. And then the cost again is probably $200-$300 to actually buy of all of Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's one of the most expensive games out there, and also one of the biggest as well. It's got very realistic graphics. You can actually fly real tests. They have different airports. You can track real-time weather. You can have a day-night cycle. You can even fly in forecasted weather or real-time. And so, yeah, there's a lot of features for this. One of my brothers has it actually, and he does some of the test flights before he goes on real ones with a small plane. The thing that's crazy, though, about this is that it's always been, of course, one of the bigger file sizes, but 2024 is only going to be a 30 gigabyte file size, which is insane. This is crazy. There is an additional 20 gigs in reserve, so that's a total of 50, I guess, but the actual file size is roughly 30 gigabytes. But most of the game is going to be used in the cloud. And so there's got to be some good performance and connection there, of course. But you'll be able to get into flights faster. You won't have these crazy load times. And you can also save on the file size, which is nice for some folks. But this comes at a cost of the RAM, the random access memory. And so this isn't just like bare minimum or whatever, but this is ideal or preferred RAM is 64 gigabytes of RAM. Just think of that. That's an expensive PC. That's crazy. I think I'm running 16 on my laptop right now. So 64, and this laptop is a couple of years old. So 64 gigs it's just insane. It's just insane, actually, how big this is. You also need better cooling, and then you're also going to need more power, a better power supply maybe to actually run all of that RAM. And you got to figure out your architecture too, so that you can actually utilize all of that. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty beefy PC to actually make this pretty good. But yeah, what would you guys rather have? Would you just have the entire file all on your hardware and not have to have as much RAM because of cloud computing and stuff, and having that constantly coming in while you're playing, right? You'd have to have a pretty dang good connection too. Or would you be okay with needing a bunch of RAM and just saving the file space and smaller load screens and all of that stuff, just have it be more real time? Personally, I'd probably rather just have the file size and have a worse internet connection so that I can actually just, again, play it. Because, again, you're simulating real-time weather, or you're simulating forecasted weather in a place, or actual, like, real air traffic and stuff. I mean, there's already other things that your system is going to be trying to take care of, and then you're adding the cloud performance gaming on top of it, and that kind of gets insane. This brings up, too, this, could this be the next iteration of next gen? Honestly, could SSDs eventually just be an option? Would it be to the point of where you don't even need a hard drive? Which sounds crazy. Like you don't even have the files. Everything is just streamed. I think that's possible. We already have that with the Fire Stick with Xbox. And Google already made a laptop without a hard drive. That was a while ago. But yeah, this technology is already there. And as more adoption happens, this will become more likely that this will actually, move into the future. So yeah, this is just an interesting idea of just not even needing not even needing a hard drive. It just sounds insane. Okay, next, Microsoft is buying future power from 3 Mile Island. Now, this is kind of a big deal because the 3 Mile Island disaster in '79 actually had a meltdown, and this was kind of a mess. Of course, they actually ended power production in 2019, but Microsoft is looking for sustainable, carbon-free or low-carbon energy, to check all of those boxes for the company, so that they can actually get approval. And one of the reactors, of course, isn't working. The damaged components of that reactor that did actually melt down were actually sold to someone else over in like Michigan or Maryland. I forget exactly which M state it was. But they got sold over to another company, and stuff's being used over there. So we have a shell of a reactor. The other reactor actually works fine. And again, it generated power for Pennsylvania for a long time over there on 3 Mile Island. And this is actually pretty big. The entire power plant is like 2,500 megawatts. And so, roughly, if you want to do the math, it's about 1,250 megawatts per reactor. And there's still one that's, has all of the components. Yes, it has been down for a few years because they've mothballed it. And so, we got to be able to bring it up to speed, do all the specs. And the energy generation supplies roughly 1 million homes with power continuously, which is a lot. Yeah, 1 million, 1 million homes. Maybe depending on the area, it would be 750,000. But yeah, somewhere in there, 750K to 1 million homes with power. So this is a massive amount of power. So what do they need it for? Well, they need it for AI data centers. And this lease is with Constellation Energy for 20 years. The idea is to actually start the plant in 2028. Now, I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet, so gold star for me, I guess. But what's happening in 2028? We're getting our next gen. We're getting our next gen consoles. We know, too, with what Xbox has showed or leaked out by accident or had to talk about during the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, is that they're going to have some pretty heavy AI computing for their console. And again, quote, it's going to be the biggest or most powerful console ever. Of course, every console that comes out is the most powerful. That's not special. It should be, right? Otherwise, what's the point of buying it? But yeah, I just find this really interesting. I think the data centers with the AI are going to have something to do with the next gen consoles. I don't know exactly how. I don't know if that's going to be an integrated system, maybe, with running and working with consoles in real time, or learning how to manage Game Pass better, or something else. We don't know. We'll have to see. We got some years to try to figure this out and actually keep us up to date. But buying that much energy for 20 years at a time, that's a lot of money. And I can't imagine this is very cheap, but it's going to be cheaper than just buying it off the grid, because they're going to have to, again, get the whole reactor going. They're going to have to employ people. They're going to have to pay for the permits and the inspections. You even have to get permits for the uranium and all of that stuff for the reactor to run off of it. Excuse me, folks. But yeah, this is just interesting. But the fact that it's AI data centers specifically, I'll keep you guys up to date on this. I'm actually quite curious. Polls this week. Thank you guys for voting. I actually really appreciate this. If you guys actually vote, I'm going to be chatting about this and doing this more often. Let me actually pull these up on my screen, because yeah, some more of you have actually voted since then. But yeah, we had one poll, with the PlayStation 5 Pro being $700, and the majority of you are actually worried about the cost of next gen. And honestly, I am too. The majority of you are actually thinking that it is going to cost more down the road, that this is going to open the door for higher costs, with like a base model being $600 and then just going up from there. This also opens up the possibility for Microsoft to think with Sony, oh, Okay, well, the new baseline is now $700. We were shooting for $600, but maybe now we have an extra $100 we can actually play with between now and then and actually make the $700 console. So I'm going to be really curious again about what the pricing is actually going to be. I'm actually thinking of pre-ordering the Xbox myself, whatever they're going to call it, and seeing actually how that goes. But yeah, I just find it interesting that it's getting expensive, and we're worried too about how much it's actually going to cost. The other thing we actually got I polled was, lately with the PlayStation 5 news, the Pro cost, Concord being a mess, no disk drive, all of this kind of stuff. Is it making you want to switch? Or maybe even, possibly think of switching down the road? 67% of you said yes, and you'd switch to Xbox, which I was actually quite surprised how high that was. 11% of you said yes, I'd basically switch to PC. You're done with consoles. And then 22% of you said no, you would actually stick with PlayStation. So the optics are actually changing here for PlayStation. It's just that people that are paying attention, some of the people that have PlayStation. I've had almost every single PlayStation that's ever been released except for the PS5. And the reason I don't have a PS5 is biggest reason is that my buddies are on Xbox. So just full disclosure there. But also looking between the two consoles, while both haven't done a great job producing games this generation, I'm not overly excited or interested with a lot of the games that PlayStation has put out. And we're starting to see a saturation of Asian games now, of samurai style games. And while this is not a bad thing, I think too much can still be bad down the road. And so I think if everybody starts, hey, like samurai Japanese Asian games are cool right now, let's make a whole bunch of those. Well, they're not all going to be Black Myth Wukongs, right? Or like they're not all going to be Sekiros or Ghosts of Tsushima. And so, like Phantom Zero, who even talks about that anymore? That already came out and went, and we haven't heard anything about that game. So part of it is that there's not a lot of IPs that I actually want to engage with on PlayStation. And then the other side for me is they're just raising the prices on stuff actually more than Xbox is, and it is getting expensive. The cheaper value option right now is actually Xbox, and the Xbox launch one runs better at higher teraflops than the PlayStation 5 does, by roughly about 10%. Yeah, somewhere between 10-15%, which is kind of crazy, and that really shows up in Space Marine 2 and some others. I also really like what Game Pass is compared to PlayStation Plus or PlayStation Premium. And so, yeah, there's just some value differences there where I'd rather be with Xbox, even if I didn't have friends. So, yeah, it just makes me curious with all of the things that's been going on lately with PlayStation. And again, Xbox isn't unscathed either. People are kind of leaning now more toward Xbox. Would they pull the trigger? Again, for me, it's about where my friends are, and probably for most of you guys as well. But I just think it's interesting that the view of Sony is changing. And boy, they better be careful. So thank you guys for voting. I think it's actually great that you guys do this, that you engage. And as you guys continue to engage, I will continue to put up polls for you guys to engage with on the weekends. Something I got to add to this is kind of more of a bulletin. 11 million Android users have been infected with the Necro Trojan virus. So Kaspersky, which is a cybersecurity firm, picked this up. They're able to find that the Trojan just is distributed via official apps in the Play Store, and then there are unofficial modded versions or updates that you can do for certain games or popular apps, or they can look like lookalikes. And so you just pay attention to what you're doing, okay? But once the Trojan is on your phone, it starts downloading more files and packages to actually start invading and getting into other stuff in your phone. So this is like adware and subscription fraud and all sorts of stuff. It's a mess. So if you think you have it, maybe, find a shop that can do a scan or something like that to actually try to find this. But the Necro Trojan is usually downloaded through advertising software kits. So this is like third-party plugins, advertising, and free-to-play games. Again, it's all through official apps. It's not necessarily malicious in that sense, but it can actually be an ad that's like on your, that you see on the screen and you accidentally tap or whatever. So yeah, just be careful and just be aware of that. Boy, let's get to my partially blocked video. This was actually pretty frustrating. NBC Universal partially blocked. Let's see, which game was it? It was a deep dive on PlayStation 5 Pro. That was the video. What they're actually selling you. And so that video got, again, quite a few views for me, which was nice. And that felt good, actually putting out content that people want to engage with. So that was great, but it definitely killed the momentum when I got this claim. And I'm blocked. This video is blocked in 237 countries. They flagged it for roughly 9-second section. And all I was doing is like what I'm doing here is I was showing, this is so stupid, I was showing the 2016 playthrough of Ratchet and Clank. And actually, no, I think it was the original. I think it was the original. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, 2016, maybe it's just a Rift Apart version. But yeah, 2016, or at least one of those. But yeah, they copyright claimed it. And they copyrighted a small section of a cutscene of Clank being in a cockpit, like an escape pod. And Ratchet is getting him out. That's it. That's all it was. There was no audio to the video, just like this. And again, it's like, why did they copyright claim it? Technically, they copyright claimed it because there used to be a movie called Ratchet and Clank. It had a fairly small budget, but it was, tens of millions, and they didn't make any of that money back, so it was a loss. And so they're copywriting a failed movie. Like, this literally doesn't make any sense to me. And the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because this is a really old game. This was an older movie. The movie wasn't widely distributed anywhere. It was basically the United States, Canada, and Hong Kong. And that was it. It wasn't distributed anywhere else. But it kills the momentum of your video. It just automatically cuts off a lot of the world. Again, for my video here, 237 countries. And this is what makes it hard to be a YouTuber. This is why, while I personally don't want to do it, this is why, too, a lot of people take the time to not say certain words, to not show certain things, to mute the audio during a whatever. And it's just trying to make money with all of the work you put into making your channel and making content for your viewers. It's incredibly frustrating. And I just feel for people like the Angry Joe Show, the Act Man, and there's others out there too. And as you get bigger, it just becomes more of a problem. Anybody that talks anything about Nintendo stuff, or sometimes even in this case, PlayStation stuff, or for stuff from Universal or Paramount or whatever. I mean, this isn't just video games. This is movies. This is TV shows. Even this right now could possibly get claimed because I showed Astrobot or something, or that little Ratchet and Clank spiel right there. Again, the AI programs will recognize it and be like, oop, what about this? Yeah, I want to copyright claim that. It's like, oh, that's great. So yeah, if you're starting out, man, it is a long road. And even with this channel, with where it's gotten to, some of it's just been luck, but some of it too has also been a ton of work. And just to have a video get killed like that, it ticks me off. It honestly is pretty frustrating. But yeah, I just thought I'd share that. Let's talk about Space Marine 2. So they're listening to their players, which is wonderful. They're addressing the allied bots that help you in the campaign and help you, especially on veteran difficulty. They're working on that. They're also hearing and understanding that the campaign is too short. People are wanting more. Again, yeah, if you're not really interested in the PvP side, you just kind of want the campaign and maybe even to play some operations, it'd be great to actually have more content for, $60, $70. That's kind of expensive. They're also hearing about the connectivity issues for the servers. They're working on, I think that's fixed already. But yeah, some of these are already working on fixing. But, Space Marine 2 is so successful, they're already talking about doing another game. And they are also talking about adding more DLCs. This is on top of their roadmap that they already have. And so, yeah, this is probably going to be a game we're going to be picking up because, again, I'm excited to actually play this. I played the original Space Marine and had a blast with that. It was so fun. But again, that was like 11, 12 years ago. And it was quite a long time. But yeah, finally, we have an IP that we can look forward to. And that's doing well. And we've had a lot of IPs that have been really struggling. That, again, they've just been chasing stuff. There's no heart and soul or passion. People can't even say negative things about the game they're working on, like Concord. And it's just getting ridiculous. So it's nice to finally see that we have a really well-made game, including this one. Ghosts of, Yoti. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. I apologize. But yeah, even this looks good. I'm excited, even with Ghosts of Tsushima and some others. Like, there's a few good games out there, and I'm excited. I also want to try Black Myth Wukong. I'm going to get my butt handed, but I'm excited to try that as well when we actually get it. Same with Silent Hill 2 Remake. Oh, man, can I play that? I don't know. At least there's no spiders in it. That'll help a lot. But yeah, just wait. We are all waiting for just better IPs. We are. Games that are games and not services. Square Enix is talking about disappointing sales for Final Fantasy Rebirth. We don't have any actual sales numbers. We never do. But they're saying that it's actually selling pretty low compared to what they would actually expect. I think that's it for my video, isn't it? Just about. We'll start it over. Why not? But yeah, we know it sold definitely a lot less than the first remaster. So the first game that they made for Final Fantasy VII, it was for PS4 and for PS5. Rebirth was only for PS5, so that's excluding a ton of their player base right there, which is a horrible move. And then the majority of, because those, the majority of the players, or a really big chunk of them, are actually still PlayStation 4 users or PS4 Pro guys. And just to make it exclusive to PlayStation 5 is just a miss, because again, you're cutting out all of that consumer base. It's also not on Xbox, so that's cutting out all of that too, which sucks and is frustrating, because again, there's probably a few million that would like to play it on Xbox, whether it's Xbox One or whether it's actually Xbox Series X or S. But this does get into the issue too of the S versus the X, and that being a problem, and developers struggling with that. And so, I hope Xbox doesn't do that with the next gen console this time, because yeah, it's just not good enough and it can't keep up. That's the problem. But yeah, we still also have a third game that's coming. And so for the story, you need to play the first one, you need to play Rebirth, and then the third one is supposed to be coming out so that you can actually keep up with the story. And having it broken up into 3 sections like this, personally, I think is a bad idea too. Because you're going to have your biggest bulk at the start, and then if you're already cutting off your previous gen, well, they're not going to play number 2, number 3. So yeah, you're going to have bad sales numbers. You're going to have worse sales numbers than you want. And I feel like they didn't entirely think this all the way through. Maybe they just should have taken a few more years and made it just one big full game. And maybe even do a physical copy. Some people will just buy it for the physical copy, and they'll get to it when they can. But yeah, I just don't think Square Enix thought this all the way through, which is a bummer. But Rebirth, it'll probably be nominated for Game of the Year. It's been pretty good. People have enjoyed it. And it looks wonderful. Oh my word, it looks so good. But again, they got to stay ahead of the curve. They got to pay attention to what they're doing. It makes me curious too. It's like, I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to be the last exclusivity games that we have from Square Enix. Because again, as I said earlier, Square Enix has already said, look, we're not going to do any more exclusives for PlayStation. And Silent Hill 2 by Konami, they've said that they're going to do a timed exclusive. It's eventually going to come out to Xbox. We can probably also assume this maybe with Metal Gear Solid Delta. Maybe it'll all come out at the same time. We still don't have a release date with the Tokyo Game Show, which it looks so good. It truly did. It looked wonderful. But publishers are ultimately seeing their margins, and they need to have a bigger player base so that they can actually sell this stuff and actually make enough money to be sustainable. Because, yeah, a lot of publishers and studios, they're struggling. So I don't believe timed exclusives are going to move the needle much for Sony. And these publishers, too, they don't want to do it anyway. Because it's really tough to sell a $70 game. You know, it's still expensive for us. And a lot of us, too, more of us are just waiting for cheaper pricing. And this is actually what Game Pass does. This is why I'm a fan of Game Pass. Because this isn't just a backwards compatibility list. I get that for free as an Xbox player. But I also get all of their day one exclusive games. Those will stay probably forever on Game Pass, including like Redfall. I don't think anybody plays that, but they're going to keep it on there. And they've even made an offline mode, which is nice. But the other thing, too, is we're also getting day one third-party titles that are just partnerships with Xbox. We're also getting, games that are at a later date. We also get EA Play games. So like FIFA and Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, Battlefield, we're getting those games too. And so Game Pass is a pretty good value. I mean, when you take out $75 for multiplayer now, which sucks, yeah, and it's not fun that Sony is $80 either. It's getting expensive just to play multiplayer now. But yeah, when you take that value out, you're paying $165 for Game Pass. And that's pretty affordable. That's pretty cheap, especially for all of the value you're getting. And I'll stick with Game Pass for a long time. But by the time it gets to $25, I'm seriously going to be reconsidering how much money there is. But Microsoft also has a rewards program. And so if you want to save some money that way, you can do that. I think it's 12,000 points for 1 month of Ultimate. And you can probably, if you push yourself, you can probably get that in a month. And so it can pay for itself. Right now I'm doing, I think, $15 a month. Roughly, maybe a little more. But yeah, having Ultimate gives you a lot of opportunities to get more points just to make that money back and get it for free. They really do. Let's see. According to Sega's website, Sonic X Shadow Generations will be on all platforms, but the only physical copy will be on PlayStation and Nintendo. No Xbox. I thought that was kind of insane. There are other deals behind the scenes. Oh, excuse me. Will there be other deals eventually behind the scenes to just have physical exclusives? I actually hadn't thought about this before. It's like, would you actually pay more for a physical copy? Some of us probably would. I'm sure that's coming too. But what if we actually made a deal with, like Sony, for example, that you can have a physical copy of the game? And would people actually be inclined toward that? I don't know. That's just something to think about. Because, yeah, physical we know is going away. We know most sales across all games are digital. We know PC is all digital now. Except for limited run games, which is awesome. If they had made a Series X version of the Tomb Raider Remaster Collection 1, 2, and 3, I'd probably would have bought it. But they didn't do Series X. Of course. It's just like, gosh. Anyway, that was kind of a bummer. But I wonder, too, if there's just not enough demand or enough consoles, again, with Series X to actually create physical copies. Because, yeah, that's something we got to think about, too. There's roughly 30 million of us. And, again, if only 1% of the audience actually wants to play that game, I mean, that's like 300,000 copies. That's not a lot. That's really not too many. So, yeah, we'll see with what the next gen, what the numbers are. But overall, what we're seeing with consoles is that more people are just going to PC. And less people are buying consoles. And so Xbox is already changing their business model, but PlayStation is working on it. but do they really see the big picture that just people aren't interested in consoles anymore? And Sony and Xbox better really be careful because, and Nintendo, they better be careful because if they restrict access, if they make it too expensive, why are people going to buy their stuff? And even Nintendo, like I seriously think we're going to have a $400 console from Nintendo this time, which sounds crazy. I mean, we've had 200, we've had 300, but again, their next gen better be something really special because their upgrade or their refresh for the Switch was an OLED screen and maybe a better battery. And was that worth an extra $50? Maybe. But now Sony's like, well, maybe we can upcharge like that too. And so then they put out the Pro that is $700. It's a tough value proposition for me. Digital Foundry, by the way, did put out something to actually get a look and kind of real hands-on experience with a PlayStation 5 Pro. And they're able to do some comparisons. And so this is a pretty big analytic breakdown, but I'll work on talking about this later because I want to have it be its own separate thing. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Sony's State of Play. This is actually already out now on my channel. If you want to go ahead and take a look at it, I'll try to remember to link it down below. But the State of Play, ultimately, in short, was a D+. We basically had one great game in the showcase. We added a few other games that were good or pretty good. But yeah, ultimately, I asked you guys that voted, what do you guys think of the showcase? And 55% of you gave it the skull, as in it was horrible. And I'm almost right there with you. I don't think it was an F. I think it was a D. Because there were some good things in there. But again, trying to resell the Pro, giving us chromatic shells for our PlayStation, giving us remasters we're not necessarily asking for. And then, too, most of the showcase wasn't even exclusive to PlayStation. I think there was really one or two games, actually, that were exclusive to PlayStation because while it says, on PlayStation, it's also for Xbox, too. Roughly 60% of it. The entire showcase that we're seeing right here. It's like, seriously? And then the only game I think that's truly exclusives is the Ghost game. And again, that's not coming until next year. So, but yeah, their states of play, and we just have too many showcases. But yeah, their states of play have not been great this year. It's brutal. We got to talk about Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's delayed now until February 14th, 2025. There was an statement expressing that they wish to delay to just further polish the game. They understand from Star Wars Outlaws that people really expect the AAA experience to not be buggy, to not have issues. I agree. When I can crash my game, when people can play and have progression bugs in the game and have to start all the way over from hours of progression, yes, that stuff should not exist in the flippin' game for $70, you mother hubbards. That should not be in there. That type of stuff didn't used to be common in games, and now I feel like it is. And so, yeah, I'd rather wait for a cheaper price point like Ubisoft Plus. Thank you, by the way, Ubisoft. That's a much better way to actually play and experience the game because it's not overly that big either. So, yeah, they've actually delayed Shadows. We also know that they pulled out of the Tokyo Game Show, and this is probably why. Maybe, too, they're not wanting to spend a lot of money or cut back a little bit. They've already shown, actually, a lot of Shadows. But, for 3 months delay, they're probably not going to change much. That's just not enough time to actually do that. Even if they had 10 months, it's not like that's going to be huge changes to the game, right? That'll be more kind of polished, maybe tweak some things, maybe change some mechanics. But yeah, it's not huge. But yeah, this is only going to be 3 months. Currently, I guess employees are saying that Ubisoft wants to add more quests right now during this delay. And that's going to work against the polish because they're going to add more quests and they're going to have bugs. And so I don't really know if it's actually going to be that polished when we get it. We also know that Star Wars Outlaws has been missing revenue numbers pretty considerably, like a few million. And this is really going to be painful. And I wonder if they're seeing this too with pre-order sales for Assassin's Creed Shadows, that it just doesn't really have any. And yeah, there's just really maybe not that many pre-orders or really any at all. We know too from one of the retailers that there was like across all of their stores nationwide, there were only thousands of pre-orders for Star Wars Outlaws. That's actually really small, pretty shocking. And and so yeah, it could be the same thing. I'll likely play it in February. I'll get Ubisoft Plus. I'll play it, test it out for a month, see what I think of it, and I'll do a review for it just like I did with Star Wars Outlaws. But yeah, this really isn't overly looking good. Currently, all pre-orders for Assassin's Creed Shadows are canceled and refunded. They're also changing their business model, which this is huge because there's no season pass for the game anymore. And there's also no paid early access, which, yes, finally, thank you. This will launch also on Steam day one. That didn't used to be the case. So they're making some changes to benefit the players, and that's what it all used to be about, and that's why they made a ton of money back in the day. But now they're just like, hey, we are doing it our way. Give me money. And I don't think that's working anymore, which is great. So now if you pre-order, again, you get the first DLC for free. But again, I don't think they're expecting this actually to do really that well. And we can probably expect pretty big layoffs from the company. Let's see. Let's talk about 30th anniversary pre-orders. They actually went live for the PlayStation 30th anniversary, which is cool. 30 years. Pre-orders went live, but there's really not that much available. The 30th anniversary Pro Bundle sold in an hour. Many people were in queue. They never got one. There was only 12,300 of these. They're numbered, and so that's pretty short. We've already seen a listing. Again, I don't know if it's an error because a lot of them are $3,000 to $4,000, maybe $5,000. But we're seeing that on eBay, there's one posting for $35K. Can you believe that? $35K. Now, this originally is $1,000 for the PS4 Pro 30th anniversary bundle, but still, that is a crazy price tag because now we're at 4 digits to actually buy a game console now. And I just think that's just insane. I just can't wrap my head around that. The 30th anniversary slim version is $500. This is actually $100 less than what I expected. So yeah, $500. An extra $50 will get you the shell, which is nice. The DualSense, if you can find one, the DualSense controller is $80. eBay has them right now for around $140, $150. I'm sure too that price will go up. The DualSense Edge is $220. And I don't know what the cost is right now for an actual Edge because I don't think they're really available yet. I haven't been able to find it. Both controllers are cheaper than I expected. I expected just the DualSense to be $100, and I expected the Edge to be $250. If you can get one MSRP, that's great. But I'm sure the scalpers are definitely going to raise those prices. I was able to talk to someone at GameStop as well. I won't mention names, but was able to talk to them about the pre-orders and stuff, and they said they only got the DualSense controllers that people can pre-order, and they only got 2 per store. Like, that seems really light. No edges, no consoles, no Pro, no Slim, like just nothing. And it's like Sony's really rolling it out pretty slowly here. Now, this in turn might make the price go up for scalpers that can get it, but I wonder too if they're staggering stuff between stores, between retailers, even between online sales through their own store to kind of mitigate scalpers getting them all. Because I think it's insane that the scalpers are raising the prices as high as they are. And yeah, the scalpers are really making this pretty horrible because this isn't just like 100% increase. This is hundreds of percent increase for some of this stuff, which is insane. If we're ever able to find, if I'm ever able to find plates, I'll post that, or I'm willing to, um, you know, buy them for you and ship it to you, and you can just pay me the cost. Or if you want some of the shells done for a PlayStation 5 controller, for a small fee, I'll swap the shells for you and the buttons and stuff. It's a little involved, but yeah, it's doable. Or you could certainly try it yourself. That's the cheaper option. But buying buying the DualSense, I guess, isn't very much. Again, if you can get it MSRP, it's really not that bad. But otherwise, man, the scalpers, I'm sure they're just going to go insane. So thank you for voting, folks. I took time to ask too about. I think. Well, let's see. I did 2 of them already. Let's see. No, yeah, actually, I think that's it. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always find me too at Gaming Garbage 22 on YouTube. You can also find me at Twitch, Twitter X, and Discord. If you're interested, all of those links are on my page on YouTube. And man, yeah, this week was pretty busy. There's some more stuff coming out too this week, and I'm probably just going to merge that into next week's gaming news. And hopefully you guys are doing well. Boy, be careful out there too, and just be aware of what's going on with Hurricane Helena. It looks like it hit some areas pretty hard. It was a Category 4 when it made land, so that's a really big storm. Even people in Tennessee are just having a mess. So it hit like the panhandle of Florida, went over Georgia, parts of Tennessee, and the Carolinas. Yeah, it's just a mess. So just be aware. Help out if you can, if you're kind of local, and hopefully you guys are doing okay. And with that, folks, I'll see you guys next week.